started to drive. The car culture. And that gave us a different relationship to distance and time. And things started to shift. And at first it didn't change a whole lot because we had to keep the cars in the back because streets were too narrow, and we had to use alleys for getting the garage in the back, or the public services like garbage and all that sort of thing. It was in the back. Do you know, I was thinking when I moved to Santa Rosa, the first place I lived was in the McDonald area on Spring Street. And so for me to get to my garage, I had to drive into an alley and go through the back, and there was my garage at the back of a long property. And then I would walk through the garden and get into my house, and in the front of my house was a porch and a garden where I could be interacting with the neighborhood. I guess it was the place in the old days where mothers used to knit, or grandmothers used to, sort beans, or children used to play. You know, that's how I imagine it, until the car culture squeezed change into it in about the 50s, because then drive-in culture became a way of life. Driving everything. Driving movies, driving cleaners, driving fast foods. And that introduced a dramatic change in the amount of time we spent at home and away from other people. And then if that wasn't enough, along came the wild 60s with its wild music and its wild riots and its wild drug experimentation. And as wonderful as it was, for as many more, it was terribly scary. And people started to feel insecure about the people around them and what was going, uncertain of what was happening. And then something happened that I just started to learn about, something that would later be called white flight. A phenomenon wherein tens of thousands of white people moved away from the more culturally and ethnically diverse urban core into the predominantly white suburbs. And that's where the architecture of fear started to show up in the way our homes looked. And houses began to take on the look of a fortress. And the front porch had to be dropped as the gathering place moved further back, away from the front, into a place where there was more safety, away from people. And in place of the porch, you had a garage, or two, or three. And to the point where it was difficult to see, well, where's the front door? Well, you didn't need it, because you drive into the garage and then go into the house and back into safety in the contained area where children now play, in the back where parents feel safer, more containment, more separation, surrounded by fences, not having to be exposed to people at all. Even the streets started to become wide. I mean, we were literally growing apart, further and further away from our neighbors. You know, the Balinese people laugh at us, the Americans, because when Americans go to Bali and they're looking for real estate, they ask for where's the most secluded place, away from all the people, where it's very, very quiet and you can't see anybody. And to the Balinese, that's the poorest kind of real estate. Why would you want that? Prosperity in Bali is when you can see the neighbors' children and you can hear what they're doing and you can walk to the civic center. So when you want to be in isolation, secluded away from everything, they say, what's wrong with you? Are you sick? No, in America, farther away is better. And since we can get in the car and drive everywhere, we don't even have to interact with anybody, really. You know, I just realized that after Spring Street, I moved to Viljoen Street, and I lived there for 5 years, and I would drive home, and my automatic garage door opener would let me in. I would drive in, it would close. I'd be into the house and safe. Didn't have to see anybody. And for 5 years I lived there, and I couldn't tell you today who lived next door to me. I never saw them on either side. Isn't that something? It's embarrassing. And it brings up the problem again. We need each other. I think we need community. I think we need to be able to connect to other people so that we can feel cared for and we can practice caring for. I think our souls do not feel complete without this component. And because we've grown apart so thoroughly, I think it's showing up in a number of ways. Like I said earlier, depression sets in, and also it shows up in the way that we try to make up for this holy longing that we don't quite understand but we feel, so we try to entertain ourselves more. I just got a new TV into my home, and one of the packages like 1,000 channels. What home needs that many channels? Or more gadgets or more toys. I understand. I love them. Buy more stuff. And then when that doesn't work, sometimes that's when addiction sets in. The soul's final cry for help, for connection, for expression. And we try to fill in the emptiness with any kind of thing, alcohol or drugs or sex or anything that will allow us to feel connected or happy, even if it's just for a few hours. And the good news to me is that I think, and maybe you are seeing this too, I think I'm starting to see the pendulum swing in the other direction finally. I think it's because our souls know, and maybe that's what's influencing the change. Maybe you notice the trend in architecture. It's around our country where malls are giving way to new open plan shopping areas in a surrounding circular building, resembling villages. Even the new planned communities that are popping up, springing up everywhere, all over the country. Homes built with like a village feeling to it. And even walkways are being widened, and cities are talking about walking traffic more, and streets are being narrowed. And even though that architecture is changing, unless I change with it, then it's only going to be a cosmetic facelift that looks like community on the outside, but in fact I'm still living in insulation on the inside. And here's exactly where the science of mind philosophy comes right in. That I am the architect of my own experience of community. Maybe we're seeing the pendulum swing back because we're realizing that perhaps we don't need to be as afraid of each other as we once were. Yes, we are learning that although we are so different in every possible way to each other, in culture, ethnicity, custom, you name it, maybe we're starting to sense with an excitement that there's some advantage to that. And we're realizing that when we do pile us all together in one spot, something fabulous happens. We learn from each other. It opens new vistas. It's where our richness is. New perspectives, new vistas open up to ideas that we hadn't considered before. And here's where it becomes personal.